My name is Emily, and I'm 22 years old. You might be curious how someone my age ended up living with her uncle, especially when you hear the story I'm about to tell. Trust me, I didn't see this coming either. I'm a student aspiring to become a graphic artist, which means I spend most of my time sketching, designing, and working on freelance projects. Life hasn't been smooth for me. After my parents' divorce when I was younger, I moved from place to place, trying to find stability. Eventually, I ended up here, living with my Uncle Ethan. It wasn't part of the plan. If you enjoy hearing captivating real life stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Stay tuned until the end, because what happened next will keep you hooked. This all began when my mom had to leave for work, and I needed a place to stay while finishing my degree. Ethan, my uncle, was the only relative available to take me in. He's been married to his wife, Clara, for a few years now. They live in a lovely home in the countryside, far from the hustle and bustle of the city. I thought it would just be another temporary move, a chance to live in a serene, quiet environment for a while. But things unfolded in ways I never anticipated. It's been a few months since I moved in, and I've adjusted to the house, the daily routine, and the peaceful surroundings. Or at least, I thought I had. But today is different. I'm writing this because something unusual happened, something that started the moment I stepped into Ethan's room while he was asleep. Before I dive into the details, let me give you some background about Ethan. He's not like a typical uncle. To me, he's always been more of a guide than just family. Growing up, he taught me how to ride a bike, fix things around the house, and even gave me my first car when I turned 18. So when my mom needed someone to take me in, he was the obvious choice. Ethan is patient, thoughtful, and incredibly kind. But it wasn't just him I had to live with. Clara, his wife, was part of the deal too. She's older than Ethan and initially came across as distant, making me feel like a guest in their home. I stayed in the guest room, far from their space, trying to avoid being a burden. Over time, Clara warmed up a bit, giving me advice on cooking and managing household chores. We didn't become close, but the tension eased. I thought things were finally settling down. But recently, something shifted. The more time I spent with Ethan, the more I felt drawn to him. His warm smiles, the accidental touches, the fleeting glances, it felt different. It's hard to explain, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I tried to dismiss it, convincing myself it was all in my head, yet every moment we spent alone seemed to intensify an invisible pull between us. Then one evening, everything changed. After dinner, I was working on a project in my room when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Ethan had been napping for hours, and Clara was out with friends, leaving us alone in the house. At first, I thought nothing of it until I heard the creak of his bedroom door. I froze, unsure whether to leave him alone or check on him. Something compelled me to go inside. I quietly opened the door, careful not to wake him. He was lying on his back, one arm resting behind his head, his face serene in the dim light. Shadows from the window softly outlined his features, making him seem peaceful and almost untouchable. I stood there, my heart racing, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, I bumped into a vase by his bedside, sending it crashing to the floor. The noise startled him awake. His eyes fluttered open, meeting mine with a mix of confusion and something else I couldn't quite decipher. "Emily, what are you doing here?" he asked groggily, his voice heavy with sleep. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled for words, struggling to explain myself. My mouth felt dry, and no explanation came to mind. "I didn't mean to wake you," I stammered, feeling embarrassed. Ethan slowly sat up, rubbing his eyes. He gave me the same kind smile he always did when he was being patient with me, but there was something different in his gaze today. It made my heart race. He observed me for a moment before speaking again. "It's all right," he said gently. "You know you can always come to me, Emily. I'm here for you." I nodded, but my mind was in a frenzy. I didn't know how to deal with this strange feeling that had taken hold of me. The room felt heavy, and I could feel my breath quickening. "I just wanted to talk," I whispered, barely able to get the words out. Ethan's smile faltered slightly, and I thought I saw a moment of hesitation in his eyes, but it vanished quickly. He patted the space beside him on the bed, motioning for me to sit. "Come here," he said softly. "You can always talk to me." I stood there for a moment, uncertain about what to do, but something inside me urged me forward. Without thinking, I moved closer and sat down beside him. The tension between us became palpable, thicker than ever. I could feel his body's warmth next to mine, and his subtle cologne lingered in the air. We were so close that I could hear his breathing and feel the rise and fall of his chest with each inhale. My heart raced again, and slowly, almost as if in slow motion, I looked up at him. Our faces were so close that I could feel the heat radiating from him. His gaze was soft, almost uncertain, but there was something else in his eyes, something that made my skin tingle. "Emily, are you all right?" he asked gently. Before I could answer, my lips parted, and without thinking, I leaned closer to him. I could feel my face flush, and my heartbeat felt impossibly loud. What was happening? What was I doing? I couldn't explain it, but everything felt so intense, like the air was charged with something I couldn't deny. Ethan didn't pull away. His eyes met mine with a quiet intensity. He didn't say anything, but I could feel his breath quicken, just like mine. The room seemed warmer, and the silence between us thickened with unspoken words. My mind was a whirlwind. Everything had led to this moment, this unpredictable, inexplicable moment. I couldn't stop myself. Slowly, I leaned in, my lips trembling as they brushed against his. At first, it was tentative, hesitant, a question. But as his lips responded, soft and gentle, I couldn't hold back anymore. My mind screamed for me to stop, but my body refused. I needed this. I wanted this. I couldn't deny it anymore. Ethan's hand gently cupped my cheek, urging me closer. His other hand rested beside us, lightly grazing my skin. I could feel the heat of his touch, and it made my skin burn. The kiss deepened, and soon it was impossible to tell where his lips ended and mine began. Everything outside the room disappeared. It was just the two of us, tangled in this undeniable connection. My mind raced with confusion, guilt, and an overwhelming sense of rightness. What were we doing? Why did it feel so necessary? There were no words to explain it, no logic behind it. Ethan pulled away for just a moment, his forehead resting against mine. Our breathing was heavy, each inhale shaky, each exhale slow. I could feel his pulse against my skin, matching the erratic beat of my own heart. "Emily," his voice was soft, strained with something more. "We shouldn't." But I wasn't sure I agreed. Something inside me refused to acknowledge any reason to stop. Slowly, I reached for his hand and threaded my fingers through his. He didn't pull away. His fingers curled around mine, as if he was holding on to me just as much as I was holding on to him. Our eyes met, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of everything hung between us. Should we? Could we? My hand instinctively moved to the back of his neck, pulling him back to me, kissing him again. This time, there was no hesitation. There was no fear, no uncertainty, just the overwhelming need to be close to him, to feel him. Ethan's hand slid down my back, pulling me closer. The contact of our bodies made everything feel impossibly intense. I didn't know where this was going, but I didn't care. There was only the moment, the desire to stay in this space where nothing existed except for us. My heart raced faster, pounding against my chest as his lips moved to my neck, pressing soft kisses against my skin. I could feel his breath against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. It was unlike anything I had ever felt before, intimate, consuming, and deeply wrong in the best possible way. "Are you sure about this?" He murmured against my skin, his voice thick with desire. "I don't want to hurt you." I closed my eyes, trying to find my voice. Everything inside me screamed to stop, to pull away, but I couldn't. The longing was too much. The need was too strong. I didn't want to think anymore. I didn't want to reason it out. I just wanted to be with him. "I'm sure," I whispered, my hands moving over his chest, feeling the heat of his skin beneath my fingertips. "I want this, Ethan. I want you." His lips found mine again, and this time the kiss was deeper, more urgent. There was no turning back now. The world outside this room didn't matter. There was only the way he made me feel, desired, needed, alive, in a way I had never felt before. The room seemed to close in around us, the light dimming as the intensity of our connection grew. Every touch, every kiss felt like a promise of something more, something we couldn't explain, but we were both willing to explore. I could feel his heartbeat steady and sure, matching mine. And though part of me still fought against the reality of what was happening, a much larger part of me surrendered completely. I wasn't just kissing him anymore. It was more than that. It was a connection I couldn't describe, a bond that went beyond words, beyond explanations. "I've wanted this for so long," Ethan said softly, his breath hot against my lips. I could barely comprehend his words as my hands roamed over him, feeling the muscles in his chest, the heat of his skin, the way he responded to me. But there was no turning back now. There was only the pull between us, the way we seemed drawn to each other in a way neither of us had ever expected. Time seemed to stand still as we lost ourselves in each other, in the quiet rhythm of our kisses, the warmth of our touches, and for the first time, everything felt right. In the stillness of the room, we were no longer uncle and niece. We were just two people connected by something deeper, something far more intense than anything I had ever known before. The air between Ethan and me hung thick with tension, neither of us moving, neither of us speaking. The silence was suddenly shattered by the sound of the front door opening downstairs. Both of us froze. My heart raced in my chest, and I quickly pulled away from Ethan, panic seizing me. What had we just done? What was happening between us? The guilt washed over me, but it was mingled with something else, a desire I couldn't ignore. I could feel the weight of it, the push and pull between what we had just shared and the reality that we were so deeply entangled in something we couldn't easily untangle. Ethan didn't move immediately. His gaze was fixed on me, but his expression was unreadable. I could feel the heat between us, the lingering closeness that hadn't dissipated. "Emily," he whispered, his voice strained. But before he could say anything more, the sound of footsteps echoed up the stairs. Ethan heard a voice. I instantly recognized it. My heart dropped into my stomach. It was Charlotte. I quickly jumped off the bed, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I didn't know what to do. My mind raced in every direction, but I couldn't come up with an answer that would make sense. Was I really going to face her after what had just happened? The door to Ethan's room creaked open, and there she was, Charlotte, standing in the doorway with a surprised look on her face. Her eyes flicked between Ethan and me, confusion flickering across her features as she took in the scene. "Emily? Ethan, what's going on here?" she asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. But there was something else too, an intuition perhaps, that something was amiss. I could feel the blood drain from my face. Charlotte's presence was like a cold shower, and all at once everything felt wrong. There was no way to explain this, no way to justify what had just happened between Ethan and me. My throat felt tight, and I struggled to find my voice. I stammered, not sure what to say. Ethan, sitting up on the bed now, his expression blank, seemed equally at a loss. His hand rubbed the back of his neck, clearly embarrassed, but not sure how to explain either. Charlotte's gaze shifted to him, then back to me. There was an unspoken understanding between us, something neither of us was ready to confront. It was as though, in that single moment, everything shifted. Charlotte knew something was happening, something that wasn't supposed to be, but her reaction wasn't what either of us expected. Instead of anger or disappointment, I was met with a profound, unsettling sadness in her gaze. She stepped into the room, quietly closing the door behind her. Her presence felt commanding, and there was a strange stillness in the air, as if we were caught in the calm before a storm. "Emily, there's something you need to understand." Charlotte's voice was unexpectedly gentle, her words carrying weight. "There's more to this than you realize, more than either of you fully understand." I looked at her, confusion flooding my thoughts. What did she mean? What more could there be? The silence in the room grew heavier, a lingering pressure after Charlotte had left. Her words had left an indelible mark on both of us, and though confusion still gripped me, her understanding and the chance she offered gave me something unexpected: hope. Charlotte wasn't angry, nor was she prepared to cast us aside. Instead, she was giving us a chance. It was fragile and uncertain, but it was still there. I glanced at Ethan, whose face reflected a mix of guilt, confusion, and something else I couldn't identify. He avoided my gaze, his hands nervously rubbing together. I could feel the weight of what had happened, the collision of our worlds in the most unexpected and complicated way. But as I thought about it more, I realized that none of this had been planned. Things had unfolded beyond our control. The only thing I knew for sure was that we couldn't ignore it. We couldn't pretend like nothing had happened. Charlotte was right. The emotions, the confusion, it all had to be confronted. We had to face it. There was no running from it. Ethan, I whispered, my voice trembling slightly, what do we do now? He looked up, his eyes filled with conflicting emotions. I don't know, Emily, he replied, his voice raw with vulnerability. I don't know what to feel, what to think. I don't know if I should be angry or ashamed, or if I'm even allowed to feel anything. I could hear the internal struggle in his voice. He was torn between the deep connection we had shared and the loyalty he still felt for Charlotte, his wife, my aunt. This wasn't something that could be resolved in a single conversation. It wasn't that simple. Taking a deep breath, I walked toward him, closing the distance between us slowly. I wanted to reach out to him, to hold him, but I wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do. I didn't know what was right anymore. I don't think we're going to figure everything out right now, I said softly, but I think we need to talk, to be honest with each other. This is too complicated to ignore. Ethan nodded, his face serious but not angry. Yeah, I know, I don't know where to even begin. I stepped closer, my heart racing but my voice steady. We start by admitting what happened, what we felt, what we still feel, and then we figure out what comes next. He nodded again, his expression softening just a little. It's not going to be easy, Emily, but I want to understand. I want to understand what's happening between us. I took his hand, the touch both comforting and charged with unspoken emotions. I don't have all the answers, Ethan. I don't know what happens next, but I'm not running from this. Not anymore. We sat in silence for a moment, each of us lost in our own thoughts, trying to process the overwhelming complexity of the situation. There was no clear path ahead, no map to navigate through the maze of emotions, guilt, and confusion. But what Charlotte had given us was a lifeline, the chance to face this together, to confront the tangled web of feelings that had ensnared us. I looked at Ethan again, our eyes meeting, and in that moment, I knew that whatever happened next, we would face it with honesty. There was no perfect solution, no easy fix, but there was the possibility for healing, for understanding, and maybe even, just maybe, something more. As I leaned back, my mind racing with possibilities, I couldn't help but think of Charlotte. Her calm, maternal guidance had opened a door I hadn't known existed. She hadn't rejected us, hadn't condemned us. Instead, she had given us room to breathe, to work through the complexities of what had happened. But what would happen next? What would Charlotte say if we told her how deeply we still felt? Would it be too much? Would she ever forgive us? Those were questions for another time. Right now, it was just Ethan and me, sitting in the silence of our shared uncertainty, knowing that nothing would ever be the same. The only thing we could do was take the next step, whatever that might be, and somehow, together, we would figure it out.